So, Regular Show, it really needs no introduction. We all know it's one of the best Cartoon Network series to ever air, and at one point in time, it was the longest running Cartoon Network series in history. And for a series that ended almost 7 years ago, it's still crazy just how popular this show is. Whether that be because of streaming, clips popping up online, or just the massive fan base, Regular Show has never dipped in popularity. And I genuinely think that's because Regular Show as a series did so many things right. From the stoner vibe of the series to the wacky adventures to just how memorable this series was as a whole. And as this show is my favorite Cartoon Network series, there's so many things that I liked about it. But when I think about them all, my favorite thing about Regular Show by far had to be its characters. I remember growing up, there were so many cartoons directed towards kids where the characters in the beginning of the series were who the characters were going to be for the entire series. Character development was pretty much non-existent, and as a result, some episodes would just become stale, boring, or predictable. But in the case of Regular Show, that was the last thing I had to worry about. The early seasons of Regular Show started off as just the adventures of Mordecai and Rigby, two slackers in their early 20s, quickly turned into a story about the park members and the crazy adventures that they went on. And over the seasons, we would see that none of the characters that we met early on would stay the same, and they would quickly grow and evolve with the story. Skips went from being the park's groundkeeper to a wise immortal that can solve any problem. Muscle Man went from being an obnoxious jerk to a real bros bro. And Benson went from being just the angry boss to a friend and almost mentor figure to our two main characters. And because of this, the audience really started to grow in interest and start to care for all the park members, not just Mordecai and Rigby. And while most people will always remember the iconic 7 park members, do y'all remember the time they introduced an 8th member? Thomas was a character introduced in the later seasons of Regular Show. And even though he'll go down as a character that had some of the least amount of screen time, when Thomas was on screen and the story was centered around him, he was objectively one of the best characters in the entire show. Dare I say, Thomas is one of my favorite characters in the entire series. So today we'll be taking a look at the 8th park member, Thomas, and the crazy roller coaster that his character went on throughout the course of the show. Now, Thomas would actually make his first appearance in the season 4 special Exit 9B. Now look, I would show clips of this special, but for some reason this episode is cursed on YouTube. And I am not trying to get this video strike down, so look, we're just gonna have to show images. But the special revolves around Garrett Bobby Ferguson Jr. trying to seek revenge on all the park members. Now if that name sounds familiar, that's because he's the son of GBF, or Garrett Bobby Ferguson, an OG Regular Show villain. In the special, he tries to build a highway that runs directly through the park that leads to a portal that allows them to bring people back from the dead. And in order to do this, he decides to get rid of every single park member by wiping their memory. And funny enough, while all this is happening, this is actually where we see Thomas make his first appearance, as he's coming to work at the park for his first day as an intern. And something that I love so much about Thomas's first appearance is that to the audience and to the rest of the park members, all this crazy stuff that is happening is just a normal day to them. They are constantly going on crazy adventures and having weird stuff happen to them, so you never really see them freak out. But Thomas is just a regular person thinking that he's coming to intern at a park. So when he hears these crazy explosions and sees a bearded man shoot his employer in the head, he begins to freak out, which is such a realistic reaction. Fortunately though, Mordecai and Rigby are able to time travel into the future and find all the park members, restoring their memories. They do end up getting captured by Garrett Bobby Ferguson Jr. and he is able to resurrect all the previous villains from the past 3 seasons. But the park crew is then rescued by their allies, which leads to an epic battle on the highway. In order to stop GBF Jr. and his dad, Mordecai and Rigby came up with a plan to make all the park members sign a document announcing that the park would be a historical landmark, because if the park falls into this category, then you can't build a highway over it. And while all the park members end up signing it, it's then revealed that because Thomas is an intern, he also needs to sign it too. That's when GBF and his dad take Thomas captive in exchange for the document. Not wanting Thomas to get hurt, the park crew ends up handing over the document, but it's then revealed that it was an actual fake out, and after the park crew secures Thomas, Thomas ends up signing the document, which destroys the highway, sending all the villains back into the portal. The special ends with all the park members praising Thomas for saving the day, and then Thomas calls his mom to tell her that he doesn't want to quit the internship anymore and that he thinks he's gonna like it there. And look, I love Thomas's introduction because he flowed so well with the rest of the park members. We already had our 7 park members and it didn't really feel like we needed a new addition. But with this one special, I was completely hooked on Thomas and I was so excited to see what his character was gonna do going forward. Were Mordecai and Rigby going to be mentor figures to him? Was he gonna go on crazy adventures alongside the rest of the gang? Well, The answer is kind of. See, while Thomas played a big role in Exit 9B, that was kind of the highlight of his character for the next couple seasons. Don't get me wrong, he would have a couple episodes that were centered more around him. There was Starter Pack, which basically revolved around Muscle Man bullying him for being the new guy, which, like I said before, Muscle Man could be a real jerk at times. And there was also Cool Cube, where Thomas would get the gnarliest brain freeze in all of animation. So yeah, Thomas was around, but that's kinda all he was. Exit 9B was really all the hype that Thomas got for the next 2 seasons. And other than that, he was either just a really minor side character, or sometimes he would even just be a borderline background character with literally just one line an episode. And this kind of frustrated a lot of fans because the way Thomas was set up, it always seemed like they were going to do more with his character. I mean, this scene where he just took down Muscle Man out of nowhere, it had to be for something, right? Well, everything that we thought we knew about Thomas, every idea that we had about him, it would all come crashing down in the season 6 special, The Real Thomas. After waking up in the middle of the night, Rigby walks outside only to find a ninja fighting a CIA agent. But he quickly realizes that the ninja is none other than Thomas. Rigby goes to question him and Thomas just tells him he must be dreaming, but before Rigby can even question it, Thomas knocks him out. The next day, Benson calls for a park meeting and Rigby, who remembered everything that happened the night before, tries to tell everyone what Thomas did. But of course, no one believes him because Thomas is the mild-mannered intern. After spying on Thomas, Rigby tries to warn Mordecai, Muscle Man, and High Five Ghost about Thomas again, but of course they don't believe him. That is until Muscle Man goes to open up a cabinet and the CIA agent that Thomas fought the night before is stuffed in there. Which honestly, I don't understand. Why did Thomas put him in a cabinet in the kitchen? Mordecai and Rigby then leave to warn the others, but that's when they find Pops and Skips tied up in the AV room. Now throughout this entire episode, Benson has been giving his new girlfriend a tour of the park, only for us to find out that his girlfriend is a Russian spy. Which honestly makes me feel so bad for Benson because my boy just can't catch a break. Thomas then walks in and then it's revealed that this entire time, Thomas has been a Russian spy named Nikolai whose sole purpose has been to steal this park from America and bring it back to Russia. And the part that makes this reveal so much more funnier is the insane mental gymnastics that the writers used to try to explain why Thomas was so much of a background character throughout the last 2 seasons. But eventually later in the episode, Thomas would end up betraying Russia, saving the park because the park crew were the only real friends he ever had his entire life. And with Thomas saving the park, Benson offers him a full-time position as a park member. But because he's a wanted man by the CIA and now all of Russia, he kinda has to live his life on the run. And the episode ends with Thomas running off into the sunset. Now Thomas would make one more main series appearance in the season 7 episode Guys Night 2. The main plot of the episode basically revolves around Thomas being tired of living his life on the run and planning this big master escape plan to get away from it all so that he can live his life in peace. But before he goes through with the plans, he links up with Mordecai, Rigby, Muscle Man, High Five Ghost, and Pops for one last Guys Night as they were the only friends he ever had. And this is honestly one of my favorite Thomas episodes because it really showed the bond and the love that he grew for the park members over his time as being their intern, whether he was faking it or not. The episode ends with Thomas faking his death to the CIA and thanking Mordecai, Rigby, and the rest of the park crew for helping him escape and being able to live a peaceful life. And then Thomas sails off in his submarine and that's pretty much the end of his story. Now even though that's pretty much the end of Thomas's story, we do get a couple cameos and updates on him throughout the rest of the series. Something that a lot of regular show fans miss is in the season 7 episode Dumped at the Altar, you can actually spot Thomas in the audience at Muscle Man's wedding wearing a disguise, which has always been so funny to me because I've always had this idea in my head that Thomas heard about Muscle Man's wedding while he was out in his submarine and he thought to himself, man, I know I'm on the run, I know I faked my death and I know it's a big risk to go see it, but I just have to attend Muscle Man's wedding because he's one of my best friends. Only for him to be sitting in the audience and having to sit through Mordecai's cringy speech. We also see Thomas one more time at the end of the season 7 finale. As the park is flying up into space, we can actually see Thomas laying on his submarine as he raises a glass up to the park crew. And I just know Thomas was thinking to himself, whatever crazy adventure the park crew was about to get into, whatever it is, they can handle it. And even though we don't see Thomas again in the actual show, in the regular show comic book series Margaret's Letters, it's revealed that Thomas actually fled to Canada and now owns a video store in Montreal. And funny enough, he only rents out spy movies, which I guess is fair, he's probably biased. But as of right now, that is the entire story of Thomas, the 8th Park member. Now we do know that regular show is getting a new series with 44 episodes and a lot of the original characters are returning. So maybe, just maybe, in one of those episodes we'll get a Thomas cameo or an entire episode revolving around him. But regardless on if we do or we don't, Thomas will always be one of my favorite characters in all of regular show. Him becoming a Russian spy was such an interesting plot point and something that I was never expecting. And I honestly feel like if any other series would have done it, it would have been called bad writing, but just because it's regular show, it actually worked. Which is even more hilarious if you know the backstory, because Thomas was not originally supposed to be a Russian spy. Series creator J.G. Quintel came out saying that Thomas was always just supposed to be a regular intern, but after seeing fans online vocalize that they wanted to see more from the character, he randomly had the idea to make him a spy, which is probably the randomest and coolest thing they could have done for his character. But let me know, how did y'all feel about Thomas? Did y'all like the spy storyline, or did you think he should have just stayed the regular intern? I appreciate and love all of y'all for checking out another video, and until then, it's been your boy Corin, and I'm off this.
Like coke, pull up in Rovers, it's over. Bitch, I'm cheese Sosa, this coke. Llama, it can't want no host. Bottle, it can't let me pour. High as fun, just like a float. Wanna glow up, let me show you.